How's it going, guys? It's Johnny Reed here with episode 5 of the Streamer Stories podcast, where stories with Twitch streamers, YouTube streamers, you name it, we've got it. People who entertain us via video games, basically. And our 5th guest for the 5th episode is Zoe, aka Miss Anthrope. Here she is. How you doing?
Hey, so far so good. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. It's been so much fun doing these, and I was like, oh, got to do one with Miss Anthrope, so thanks so much for agreeing to do it.
Absolutely, it's an honor. I need to catch up. I've only caught a few episodes so far, but I'm loving them.
Oh, yes, please do. So, yeah, please subscribe, everyone who is watching, and please subscribe to Miss Anthrope as well. So tell us a bit about yourself as a streamer then, Miss Anthrope. Introduce yourself.
Well, all right. I take many hats. My name is Miss Anthrope, or Zoe, as mentioned. I run Anthrope Arts. I'm a full-time designer as well as digital and traditional artist. I also do live streaming of variety based towards survival horror, as well as kind of doing unofficial admin work for a Discord channel. So, yeah, a little bit of everything.
You do a lot of good work on that, I must say. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
You are so good at it. It's unreal how good you are at that. But we'll get to that obviously later on. So we won't go back to the beginning, obviously, right at the beginning. So tell us, do you remember the first memories of video gaming when you were a child?
Boy, there were two that really stood out to me. We grew up next to an old bowling alley, Sunset Bowl, with a whole arcade and everything back in the 90s. And I used to play Galaga with my dad when we'd go through, and he'd come back with a little bit extra change. We'd play that. And eventually, when I went into typing classes in my primary school, elementary, we also had a game on there called Space Station Theta, which was like this really, really old, like, Mac platformer.
Wow.
So those some of the earliest.
Go through that. Tell us through that. What was that like?
It was, I guess simple beginnings, but as a kid, I was maybe 6 to 8. It absolutely blew me away, and I think it was my proverbial entry drug, per se, into gaming, honestly. From there, our landlord had a, old IBM that we could play Doom and Heretic and things on, and
nice.
Eventually branched out, so...
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an interesting introduction. So did you spend a lot of time in the arcades as well, or was it just the one next to the bowling alley, or?
It was very much my home away from home. It was maybe a half a block away, and I still remember sneaking out and getting in trouble for disappearing and going check the coin return machines just so I could play another game.
Excellent. So what was your go-to? What was the other arcade games that were around at the time? Because in the 90s, there was a big rush, wasn't there?
Huge rush. We had, one of the big ones that had just come out was the Star Wars pod racing, Hydro Thunder. There was this, there was House of the Dead 1 and 2, and DDR Extreme. I played a lot of Dance Dance Revolution as a kid as well. God, they would rotate it about monthly or so, to maintain all the arcade cabinets. So sometimes they'd swap it out with like Time Crisis and some of the air combat games. And there's one called like Cyber Troopers over here, but it has like 5 different names, and it was like this mech like battle game where you had 2 joysticks and you could turn and split it out to jump and like special attack. It was like fighting, giant fighting robots in space. So
brilliant.
All about it.
That's amazing. Because obviously this is like episode 5 now, and you know what? Arcade gaming has not been talked about so far, so it's fantastic to hear about it because it was such a big part of the 90s and kind of a little bit in the noughties, I suppose. Still big in Japan.
Yeah. Huge.
So how much of arcade gaming really was that a big part of your childhood? But how far into your childhood? Into your teens, maybe, or?
Boy, I think I kept going until the place was demolished.
Oh no, that's a sad story.
I went until the bowling alley itself closed, and the arcade was still open as they were doing maintenance in the main area. So it went easily up through my single digits into my double digits until I finally moved up further north from where I was at the time.
Wow.
So it was definitely instrumental in probably my quote unquote addiction to video games.
Oh wow, that's brilliant. I love it. It's so underrated arcade gaming. It's such a shame it's not as big now as it used to be. But
Yeah.
okay then. So when was the first time you had? Did you, so based on what you were saying before, you had like an MS DOS. Did you stick with PC gaming when you were growing up?
I went between a bit of console and PC. I kind of played a bit of both. Generally, whatever I could get my hands on.
Yeah, yeah.
My dad was a really big football fan at the time, and what he would do is he had purchased me an NES, and he would get new game conveniently around American football season.
Got you.
So
yeah.
I would be quiet the entire season, and from there, yeah, I did that. I played on an old IBM. I played on, what was it, El Capitan, like the first color Macintosh computer, and Atari Lynx, and just about everything, honestly.
That's fantastic. So yeah, you really did have the whole spectrum then, didn't you? You had the arcade gaming, and then you were playing like 80s consoles then, weren't you? Really, in essence.
Yeah.
So how much gaming did you do with your dad, or was it kind of like a hand-me-down thing, or what was it like?
It started out pretty strong. It sort of kind of tapered off over time. I admit most of the times I either played solo, or when we had the miracle of dial-up internet, I would start playing online competitive games like Tribes 2 and Quake 3 and Skull Tag Doom, and also as well as tons of other Super Nintendo and DOS games such as Galaga I mentioned, Heretic, Pharaoh's Tomb, like this old Apogee sort of platformer puzzle.
Wow.
PlayStation Fate as mentioned, Star Fox, Super Mario World, Lunar Lander, Treasure Math Storm when I was learning, Freddy the Fish and Space Quest.
Oh my word.
Baldur's Gate. So
amazing.
it was my childhood. So
oh, what a rich set of games you just mentioned. Wow. I don't know where to start with that, really, to be honest with you. No, I can't even start. Brilliant. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So you did PC gaming and console then. So did you have like a favorite console, really? Or was it PC?
I feel like if you ask me now, I would probably say PC, mostly because eventually I migrated over there when I realized emulators were a thing as a kid, So I had a huge phase of trying to get everything to work on my PC. Early on, probably played the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64 the most. Easily, like, the most times I would play and the most games I would get for it, but I did very much have specific enjoyment out of PS1 as well, with Siphon Filter and Metal Gear, although I only owned VR missions.
Okay.
And Spyro the Dragon.
Hey.
So.
Fantastic. All right. So yeah, if you had to name your top 3 like Nintendo games of the SNES, what would they have been?
Ooh, top 3 for the SNES.
Going for the difficult questions early on.
Oh yeah, I specifically for the Super Nintendo, I'd want to definitely say I played the most Super Mario World and Star Fox for sure. They were the first 2 games I had, so naturally they kind of hold a special place. And the Star Fox series in general, I've been always a huge fan of as a result, because every single Nintendo console I've had has had the Star Fox game first, at least that had one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always holding a special place. Super Mario World itself, I am terrible at Super Mario World, even nowadays. Like, I don't know what it is, but I love it every time, as well as following into a little bit, maybe not an obscure one, but there's a very close tie between 2 racing games, Stunt Race FX, which use the 3D sort of mock-up engine that they used for Star Fox, and a racing game called Uniracers, where you race around on tracks as unicycles, and you do like flips and tricks and go super fast. And
that sounds really cool.
And yeah, a lot of bright colors and like surfer music in the old MIDI and everything. It was great.
Oh man,
I'll need to play it on sometime.
Yes, please do. That sounds amazing. I've never heard of it. I love it. Oh, brilliant. So yes, you kind of really split your time then between console and PC then, really, didn't you? So going into the 90s and maybe perhaps into the early noughties then, so was it still split 50-50 or so?
Going into early noughts, I started leaning over towards PC gaming quite a bit more. Once I hit middle school, I had less time to really sit down. So when I went into middle school, I had saved up and was allowed to purchase a laptop. And from there, I had gone through the eras. I'd gone up from, Atari to the NES to the Super Nintendo, PS1, 2, etc., up to Xbox, and I'd been playing Morrowind. Like thousands of hours in Morrowind. And when I got my laptop, naturally, that was the first thing I got. And my cousin as well got me into a arena shooter called Tribes 2.
Okay, yeah.
And, Tribes, you have these projectile weapons. There's nothing that's hit scan, and you jetpack and you ski and you try to go as fast as you can, capture the flag, destroy the base, feel like a badass the entire time. And the rest was history. That's when I really started getting into the online and comp scenes and started pushing PC mods, and the Orange Box was about to come out somewhere around there, and
pivotal. Before we go to Orange Box, let's talk about Elder Scrolls then. So Morrowind was that your first Elder Scrolls game?
That was indeed. I missed the boat on Arena and Daggerfall, but once I found Morrowind, I went online and found the original Bethesda ZeniMax site and got my hands on a copy of Arena and Daggerfall, and that was my first introduction to like an RPG where you could just do what you want to.
Yeah.
And that had me hook, line, and sinker as a kid, especially since this was at the time where we didn't have as many microtransactions and a lot of pushing of additional monetization. It was just, you had the game built, it was released, and you'd get some expansions, but most of the time it was up to you if you wanted to make your own content from there.
It's interesting you mention that, though, because just thinking about like when Oblivion came out and there was that controversy when they had like the horse skin, I think it was, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, horse armor DLC.
What a fascinating moment that is now, looking back, and how microtransactions have happened since then, because that was shut down immediately. That is not acceptable, and now it's the norm, isn't it? What a crazy time.
Yep, anywhere that's AAA, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
wonderfully crazy in that respect, that's for sure. So,
absolutely.
So tell us about Morrowind then. So your first forays into Morrowind, what was that like?
Oh, first foray into Morrowind, immediate overwhelming, like especially since it came out when the system was set up on like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons era, so it was still kind of in that complicated sorting numbers out phase. And my first character was at like an Argonian like hunter thief, so I used only spears, and eventually I started using throwing knives because I realized the cliff racers would absolutely destroy me if I didn't. And unarmored, which I didn't know was bugged, so I wound up dying all the time.
Oh, man.
And I wound up breaking the main quest like everyone probably does at least once.
Yep.
And I didn't realize it. So the first time I beat it was actually on that, and I did the break. I searched up a sequence skip, like, because the internet had just got up to the point where we started getting game chatter. And so I went to each location manually without the quest line to do it and beat Takeoff myself. So I actually never played the game as it was intended until well later.
Oh, goodness. Oh wow! And then I suppose when you
Oh,
went Oblivion and Skyrim came out, then what were your thoughts on those in comparison?
I I still played quite a lot of Oblivion. I did not play as much because I felt like it was getting a little too watered down for my liking. Like I liked the original game for that character planning. I liked it for the adventure that I'd build and excuse me, expanding, as an adventurer, going from this like nobody to this destined figure to save all of Vardenfell.
Hmm.
And Oblivion had that very much so, but like I said, it started getting a little watered down, and the
Yeah.
Horus Armor DLC was kind of a thing, but as a kid, I didn't quite care just yet. Skyrim, I enjoy as a sandbox, but as mentioned, it took a very different direction, so I
Yeah.
think I enjoy it for very, very different reasons.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Brilliant.
So,
All right. So then you mentioned the orange box. So what was your go-to on the orange box?
oh, easily, like, at first, it was Half-Life 2. And then it was once I got a computer strong enough to handle it, because initially I had like potato mode when it came out.
Yeah.
Then it was Team Fortress 2 and eventually Left 4 Dead. And we had a gaming group through middle and high school that would get together every Thursday to play basically a bunch of party games. We'd play basically all the Orange Box games. We would play Mario Party, the Nintendo 64 one, Smash, anything we could get our hands on. And but I think I've played Left 4 Dead easily the most of all of them.
Oh.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
personally, I'm not a massive PC gamer. I've always been console based, but like, and same thing like online gaming. I've not been much of an online gamer, but the amount of hours I put into Left 4 Dead, the amount of pure
Oh, yeah.
hours I put into that, I don't even know how many. It was so addictive. So what would you do
Absolutely.
on Left 4 Dead? So what was your like? Did you play versus mode a lot, or did you do campaigns?
Most of the time we would do campaigns. I was not much for versus mode, mostly because we did not have a big enough base to really do it.
Yeah.
And from there, most of the time, I would oftentimes sit back with a sniper rifle because most everyone else would go for the shotguns or the automatics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was the head special infected person, and I'd get yelled at if I missed him. But
Oh, so it was
and,
you.
yeah, it was me. It was totally me. I'm sorry I missed the headshot on that smoker and got you grabbed. There are so many stories that we've had from that, and it's incredible.
Amazing. Who's your go-to character then in Left 4 Dead?
Oh, Zoe, easily
Yeah.
for the namesake.
Damn right.
It's the same
Of
spelling
course.
and everything.
Yeah. Oh, I always go for the girls. I'm always Zoe or I'm always Rochelle. Don't know why. I just always.
Oh
go
yeah,
For, it's the feminist
I love
in me.
Francis and Ellis though.
Yes.
Like if I don't play them, I play Francis and Ellis.
Yeah, I love Francis. Oh, I love the how much he hates everything from Ellis.
Oh yeah,
Oh, sorry, Francis, not Ellis.
except
Sorry.
Steam. He thinks Steam is okay.
Yeah. Yes. Oh. So what is your favorite video game and why? One game.
One game.
How can you narrow it down?
Oh, that's a tough one. Like for the sake of devil's advocate, I'm gonna take Morrowind out of the equation because I would say that, but we've already covered it. Probably that being eschewed. Honestly, going and switching gears. Dungeons of Dreadmore.
Okay.
It's like a more visual approach, with a humorous take on the classic rogue-like scenario of Rogue. Like Rogue is, your first sort of turn-based randomized game, for the namesake as general. But I put so many hours into Dungeons of Dreadmore, especially since I'd been going through school and I'd been studying in like an honors art course at the time, so I didn't have as much time to play longer winded games. So what I would do is on my study laptop, I'd keep a game up and I would make a random character and I would just see how long I could go. And if class started, I would just close my laptop and I'd continue it again later. So in terms of keeping myself sane and the amount of replayability, because it made it through 4 years of high school in the States. Probably Dungeons and Dreadmore or any sort of similar, like, classic turn-based roguelike.
Wow. Brilliant. Alrighty. So, I think you've done half and half, really, in terms of... I was going to ask the question, so do you mostly play games on your own or with family and friends? But you kind of got a nice middle ground there, based on what you've been saying.
Yeah, to sort of rehash, growing up, situation was such that I didn't really have friends or family, really. I kind of grew up on my own some, so, I do all my stuff as usual, and then I would sit down and just play games, be it on the laptop, when I got it, on the Super Nintendo, on our old work computer, or surf the internet, like... old GeoCities accounts. We're talking like was it Hypnospace Outlaw era? So it was pretty much all I ever did, honestly. I either played games at home or went to the arcade and was fully on my lonesome unless someone wanted to play DDR with me. So yeah. Or online.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned GeoCities, just making me think back about old websites now. I mean, did you ever go on like Game FAQs or anything like that as well?
Oh yeah, when GameFAQs really came out, when Newgrounds and Albino Black Sheep started coming up with Flash games, I was all over that, and especially during high school when we managed to get a whole blazing 54 kilobits a second to download all of those.
Amazing, yeah.
And the SWF like Flash era was incredible, and it's honestly probably one of the most instrumental like paradigm shifts in gaming and media that got me into animations and artwork in general, honestly.
That's amazing. Talk us a bit about that. I know it's not really necessarily game related, but I'm sure you've got stories that are game related. So tell us a bit about that, yeah.
Oh, about the the whole animations and things.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So early on, I'd been gaming for quite a few years by then, and our elementary school had a kind of a tech focus. They were sort of doing this program to introduce us to computers at an early age, and I realize now it was so they could get a signing with Macintosh to get a full new computer lab.
Right.
So we learned to touch type. We learned to play games. They also had like web design and animations courses. And just by virtue of seeing all these animations start popping up everywhere, I went into Macromedia Flash before it was Adobe. And we would program websites in Notepad, and I would always do it with the aspiration to make my own game, even though in the end they were quite terrible. Let's be honest. At the time I was learning, and from then on, I continued to play games, and it continued to, push me to research and draw, and I landed in fine arts somehow, and then eventually illustration and back to design. So I don't know where I went off the beaten path, but now I'm kind of back on track towards doing animations or concept work, or eventually game dev eventually. But
yeah,
it's a very different beast than it was when I was studying, though.
I was going to say, I'm sure it's changed so much. I mean, yeah, you were really kind of almost, in the period where it's breaking through and pioneering. You just mentioned Adobe in itself in its infancy. It was so all new then, wasn't it? Now it's the norm.
It was, oh god, it was brand new, and they still had the competitor Macromedia. Macromedia still had Flash. I believe Adobe did not have a competitor at the time, and they were very much interested in that animations program. They both had I believe Dreamweaver and Go Live separately, and then it just got merged into Dreamweaver when Adobe bought them out. And yeah, from then on, when they bought them out, like the rest is history. They continued to grow, and now they're a little overpriced. But you know, during my childhood, that was the staple. And even though it was majorly crash happy, it was prone to bugs, prone to crashing, prone to not saving your work and having weird bugs and glitches. Like it was essentially Krita before Krita, and Krita is now this amazing, huge open source program too.
Wow,
we're going way off the beaten path.
I
Sorry.
know, but no. I asked. No,
So-
it's good. It's all interesting. It's
Yeah.
part of you. So you know. So tell us about what games you're playing right now, then.
Oh boy, I just finished Dead Space 1 because I'd watched so many Let's Plays and I'd seen so many people in my Twitch list playing it that
Yeah.
I decided to play through it myself. And as expected, I absolutely loved it. Personally, though, I do a lot of Resident Evil 4 playthroughs. I'm going back for like my umpteenth playthrough. I'm
Oh.
dinking around with just a sniper rifle just to see if it's possible. And otherwise, I've been also playing this sort of roguelite game called Loop Hero, where you get this set path and your character will run along the path and fight dudes. And your whole goal is to level them up enough and give them enough challenges to fight the end boss within a certain time limit so you can move forward. So I've been doing that in my free time or during lunch or something in between, or when I'm just procrastinating really bad, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioning before about rogue games because I think they're now probably it's more popular now than I think they've ever been. There's a lot of different rogue games out there. So you see, again, talking about seeing like the whole process of that. So talk us through that again. So about, you know, what are your favorite rogue games over the 2 or 3 decades, I suppose?
Boy, well, first off, there's one that I still don't know the name of, but it was basically a knockoff of Rogue, and it was on my dad's work cell phone when I was a kid.
Okay.
And we were a relatively poor family, so there was really no daycare for me. So what I would do is I would sit in my dad's work truck while he'd work, and I'd play this little thumb Tetris game, and I'd play this rogue-style roguelike on his old, like, Nokia phone.
Wow.
And that was easily one of my favorite because you just, it was literally just, you find the area, you fight the enemy, you get money. That's all it was. But, your huge entry game. From there, I was huge on Angband. I was huge on, as I mentioned, Dungeons of Dreadmore prior. When we started hitting the roguelite sort of phase where it wasn't quite turn-based, I was huge into Rogue Legacy and, Risk of Rain, and the list goes on. Like, I have to load my Steam list because I think I have something like 100 of them. It's probably my most played genre.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I loved Rogue Legacy. Have you played Rogue Legacy 2 on beta yet?
Oh, I have not.
Oh,
I've been
it.
so wanting to.
It's really good. It's really good.
Oh, man. I still have Spelunky 2 sitting in my library, too. I played the first one to death, and... Oh, man.
No, I love Rogue Legacy. It was excellent. My son got me into Rogue Legacy. I never knew it existed. But he was like about 4 or 5 at the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he was playing it. I was like, what is this game? It's actually really good. And then, that was it. I was addicted,
4 hours later.
For a long period of time, he was much better at it than I am. I eventually caught up to him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, he's really good at it. He's really good. He's beaten it. He's beaten Rogue Legacy. I think he beat it with like...
Oh, man.
He was like 7 at the time, 6 or 7 years old at the time he beat the game. I was like, oh my god, proud moment.
That's... I'm so proud.
Yeah. There's something wonderful about that when your kids complete games. So speaking of then, so what is your tell us about a favorite video game story about you growing up?
Oh, about me. Okay. So, a fully personal one, and it's kind of gaming adjacent. Uh, I was, as I mentioned, I was a major fan of the Star Fox series.
Yeah.
And Star Fox 64 especially, because I probably played that game for the longest in between. And I used to work at a local department store, Target. I'll just, bring it up because it has nothing related to the place. And someone went through with a Star Fox 64 like patch on their bag.
Okay, yeah.
And, I mentioned, hey, look, I love the patch. Star Fox 64 is probably one of my favorite games of all time. I love that you have that. And she had like a Cornerian Army like rocker patch on her coat and everything. And someone piped up behind her and says, hey, look, I worked on that game. What? And I turned, and it was Rick May standing in front of me. Rick May, the voice actor of Peppy Hare and the Soldier.
Oh, wow.
And first off, I was a little dumbstruck, but that was incredible because I got to turn and say like, hey, look, I know it was a team that did this, but you're instrumental in my entire childhood.
Wow.
Like, thank you for what you did. And he made a somewhat joking comment that he was disappointed that everyone only knew do a barrel roll.
Yeah.
And I took a look at him dead in the eyes. I'm like, when I was playing it as a kid, I was terrible, and the one I remember is knock it off, Fox. And he had a good laugh.
Oh wow, what a story. That's amazing.
Yeah. He passed recently in 2020, but he was quite old, so.
Wow. That's amazing.
Had a good run. Did voice acting lessons here too, and just maybe a couple miles away from me.
That's amazing. But that's the upset reality, I suppose. But I think up until probably the last few years, maybe, that voice actors and game developers didn't get the attention they deserved.
No,
back in the 80s,
some didn't
90s.
even get paid.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
I've noticed there's a change in that recently. I think with the power of Twitter, really, a lot of voice actors are getting some real love out there, and it's really good to see. But only recently, like one of the people I follow on YouTube has been trying to find all the voice actors of the Resident Evil games from the 90s, and they're so hard to find. They're so hard to find.
Incredibly hard.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But
them and Konami were especially terrible. Like the Silent Hill series, even the protagonist characters did not get paid. And that's the reason why they could not get their rights for the remakes, the remasters of the Xbox One, I believe, and the PS4. So they had to get a whole recast because the other guys said, yeah, you can pay us for that time before, or you can stuff it, basically. So
if you were stuck on a remote island and you only had 3 games to play for the rest of your life on the island, what would they be and why? Doesn't have to be your favorite game, but it could be as well, of course. But 3 games.
I would say I would be lying if Morrowind or Daggerfall was not on that list, just for the sheer amount of time I've played it, and probably I'm still discovering new things after 6,000 something hours or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Original Doom, especially since the original Doom, I believe, did come with the dev kit, so eventually I could probably make my own Doom wads, and assuming I could cheat and bring my already installed folder, I have so many mods, it's insane. And probably one of the most memorable ones solely for the story and how involved I got was Ace Combat 5.
Okay, yeah.
And it was the sort of flight simulator sort of game where you're in this strange real alternate, Earth where an asteroid was going to hit the planet, so all the world's nations put together to make these huge super weapons to shoot it out. And they succeeded somewhat, but it still crashed in, and most of Earth is just coalesced back into this one major landmass, and now everyone has super weapons and are fighting each other again. So it's your whole
Just that story's amazing, isn't it? Just the way you describe it. It's just, but it's true. That's what's beautiful about video games. You say something like that, and you go. Most people who don't understand video games are like, "What? What are you talking about?" But yeah, that's music to my ears. It's so good.
Oh, it's incredible, and like the development of your team all the way through, because you just start out as this little like sort of podunk kind of National Guard stuck on an island doing trainings and doing nothing else, to becoming like this legend. Like you show up on the battlefield as they called you the Demons of Rosgrees, and you come up as this force to be reckoned with, and people panic. And it's incredible because going through that game, you get voice chatter, you get enemy comms, you get, civilians talking, bleeding through your co-op mics. You get AWACS yelling stuff at you, all that. And as the game progresses, they get more scared of you if you listen to that comms. Right. They're like, oh, geez, the Black Plains are here. Let's get out of here, like, we're done.
Oh, brilliant.
So...
And it's quite interesting you mentioning about the mods and the game development kits and stuff for Doom, because again, that game came out, 93 I think it was? That's so ahead of its
93.
time. 93. So ahead of its time.
It's 20 years old, and it still has a diehard community.
Yeah, it's like
that and build engine games, like both of those, that Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, what was it? The other one. Blood. I haven't played Blood as much, but I still love it. Like all those, so much community to it. It's incredible.
But again, I mean, Doom, there's so many like layers, I suppose, should we say, in terms of how pioneering that game was for video game history. But just it blows me. I've played Doom, but I've only played it on console, so I've never played it on PC.
Yeah.
But just the idea alone that you mentioned there about the fact that there's dev kits and stuff like that. I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely mental. And again, there's so many games that have been linked for or against modding or game development of fans getting involved. So how much of that have you been involved in? I think you kind of touched on it earlier. How much modding or tweaking of games have you been doing over the years?
Mostly little bits and bobs. Oftentimes I would simply make mod packs. I would go and find, hiccups. I would probably go through and find some of my favorite mods, make packs, mention the original authors, and send them off. But most of the time, I would tend to do like quality of life things, like quick switching or better mouse movement in terms of Doom. Or we mentioned Skyrim earlier. I did like for your 100,000th playthrough or whatever, I did like a waitlist crafting items for like everything, so you wouldn't have to go running back and forth to do everything. You could just carry 1,000 dragon bones on your back or whatever.
Yeah.
So lots of little quality of life, some silly mods. There's a Left 4 Dead 2 or Left 4 Dead 1 mod floating around that puts like the shining, like, here's Johnny face in place of the moon. And all the zombies go fun as they're running at you and things like that. But
oh my god. Oh man.
So lots of little silly projects, nothing huge.
I know you've probably seen some of Beelzebub. Shout out to Beelzebub, obviously. Some of his mods with the Teletubbies. It's been crazy.
Oh yeah.
It's terrifying.
My survivors are velociraptors, and every once in a while the animations will decouple and people will run around as in the in-cap state. So it looks like velociraptors are just like power sliding everywhere, shooting zombies with a double barrel shotgun in one hand.
It's amazing. And I suppose, just speaking of Skyrim, you surely saw the Macho Man Radio Savage dragons, I'm sure. Because they were amazing.
Oh, yeah!
That's spot on. That's better than mine. I'm not even going to do mine. It pales in comparison.
Just have the dude roll up and burning you down with flames. Oh yeah, it's macho madness.
That's so good. That's so good. All right, let's move on. So let's go to current times then. So I haven't actually asked the question. How long have you been streaming for?
Oh boy, there's a huge gap in it, but probably about 4 years. I started streaming back in very, very early Twitch days.
Yeah.
Initially I had watched a live streamer, Lobos Jr. He was a QA tester for BioWare at the time. Do Dark Souls challenge runs and play a bunch of FromSoft games. And from him, I met a friend of his, the Fat Wizard, who would do like Binding of Isaac runs and, do every Friday he would call it Fat Friday, and he would try like really weird snacks he'd find. And awesome. Those two were always so passionate and so into it. It had encouraged me to give it a shot. And so, yeah, something like 4 years. And like from the very, very early, like 2014, something like that, it was a very, very different scene.
All right. And so so you had a gap, did you say, between then and now?
Yes. About 6 years. So I think about 2014 to 2016-ish, maybe a little bit longer. It's kind of hazy. I hit a point where I needed to get, make income. So I went to a job, and I had to make the decision between stream and going back to study artwork, basically. I couldn't afford schooling, but at the time we had things like Udemy coming up, like online tutorials and online schooling. So I went back to school for about 5 to 6 years and wound up getting stuck in a retail grind in the butcher's trade. And so I had a very extended break before Origami Dog actually started streaming. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it again because it's so drastically different. I want to be on top of it to help him out. And so far I haven't stopped doing that just to help him out. We've been doing a tag team. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I guess shout out for Origami Dog. So again, so yeah, how was that then? Obviously, streaming, with your partner, obviously not necessarily at the same time, but obviously myself and Punchitsu are in the same boat, really, in terms of the fact that we've got a schedule, So how was that for you? Both doing something you love.
Yeah, it's awesome, honestly. I mean, he'll kill me if he hears this, but he worries about his content all the time.
No, that's
Hell, he yelled at me from the other room.
God damn it! I hope he didn't.
But he's always striving to improve, and it's really inspiring, honestly, just to see him pushing, and it encourages me to keep going. And we're just kind of playing off each other all the time.
Yeah, well, again, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because like me and Sue are in a similar boat in terms of the fact that I swear 100% she's a far better streamer than me. And again, I can be constructively critical, sometimes like, oh, work on that, and of course you mean it with so much love, don't you? But that's what makes relationships so beautiful, again, as Twitch partners, but also as real life partners as well. So it's great. So how did you come up with Miss Anthrope as your username?
Miss Anthrope was actually an old tag I used to use when I did house comp during Tribes 2 and Tribes Ascend era.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Originally I'd played as Half-Twit because I was mostly like intel. I didn't do a whole lot of shooting. I did some sniping, but I'd tell people like when flag cappers would go by, when offense was coming up, But when I practiced a lot harder and I went into a more offensive role, I switched to Miss Anthrope because, my job was literally to kill people. So it was a play on the word Miss Anthrope. And rest was history. It just stuck with it from there.
Sorry, you mentioned tag. I thought you were going to go down the Randy Savage route again then for a second. Talking about tag team wrestling for a second. Wow. So this is going to be an interesting question for yourself because you said you've had a few breaks. But do you remember what your first stream was like? So that might have happened a couple of times, mightn't it?
It's kind of happened twice, I guess, technically. One of my first runs, I don't quite remember what I did. I believe it was Morrowind, mostly because I knew that worked on my computer because I played it enough, and I knew it could handle the streaming software at the same time. And I had some support from Fat Wizard, and I had some people come in and chill. And at the time, you didn't really have like our own emotes and affiliate. It was just you're either partner or you're just streaming for fun.
Right, yeah.
So I went on, I just streamed for I think 2 to 4 hours or something like that. I pretty much just played the game because I didn't have a whole lot of interaction. I also had the worst setup you could absolutely imagine because I was basically sitting on my bed with my laptop, like in my lap. I had like a bargain bin webcam, and you're gonna laugh at this. I had a broken adapter for the N64, so I used an old Hey You Pikachu mic, and I plugged it in and I clipped it to my shirt.
That's amazing. Yes.
So
love it. No, well. Again, that's what makes it all worthwhile, isn't it? We have to make do to get to where we are, don't we? So that's improvisation.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
That was crazy too, because any sort of bot you had, any sort of streaming software and stuff, it wouldn't set it up for you. You'd have to manually set everything up, your bit rate, your manual adjustments. It wouldn't get you in the ballpark like it does now. So, you would have to be like you'd have to sit there and learn the documentation and see how everything works. And if something went wrong, usually it took quite a bit longer to fix it, but it was a lot of fun. It was still a lot of fun. A bit of a hair puller, but
God.
Yeah.
And the fact that you chose Morrowind as your first game, again, because, again, just personally speaking as a streamer, I've been so apprehensive to play RPGs on stream because just the long-windedness of the stretch of the game as well. It's so hard to pull that off, but, that's huge credit to you to start that as your first game, I think.
In the end, I don't think I wound up finishing it. No. I think eventually I wound up getting some stronger computers. I got a tower computer for one, an old like secondhand Alienware computer that I put together on my own after a while. And I did a Resident Evil 4 professional pistol-only challenge run for like my first major sort of thing.
Nice.
And I think that was one of the ones that really sort of put me on the map, to speak. Like, that was the time where I started getting rated. At that time, I had the opportunity to join the Wolfpack with Lobos Jr. and was probably one of the lowest rungs on the stream team, but it was still a hell of a lot of fun, and people were really cool. And that was a mega turning point, and I didn't want to give that up, honestly.
Amazing.
So
that's awesome. So do you have like a favorite stream, or do you have some stream memories that you'd like to bring up? That might have been one, but any others?
Yeah, that was a huge one, but I do have another. Eventually, when Dark Souls 2 came out, I wasn't the craziest fan of it, but I did like the variety of armors and weaponry and cosmetics you could get. So I decided, you know what? Let's try doing some cosplay runs.
Oh, nice.
Like, just try to make characters in the game or do silly challenges. We did like Pyramid Head, chat voted, and we did one called the Bloody Bandit, which was like 2 daggers and just as edgy as possible. And one of the most popular ones for me was back when you wouldn't get DMCA'd as well. And I had music requests on. I had organized a Mother Russia run. And I dressed myself up in as many flag colors as I could. and I ran around with like a blacksmith's hammer and a full moon sickle. So I ran with a hammer and sickle, and I punched my way through the game. And every time we'd run into a boss, chat would play the USSR anthem right when we'd go. And I still remember that every time, because when we'd come up on boss, we'd have a little spike in people, and then we get as I'm running up on a skeleton.
That's so good. That's so good. Oh, so if you had to give advice to anyone that might be considering streaming, what would it be? What would be your advice for anyone that thinks about streaming?
Ooh, a few of them. Initially, definitely don't get discouraged. It's going to be, especially nowadays, it's so saturated. We have so many streamers out there. We have so many platforms. So it will be quiet early on, but that's okay, because that gives you the chance to experiment. It gives you a chance to learn and figure out what you like, what you dislike, etc. And that way, also, too, is a safe bet is, unless you have prior experience in like public speaking or radio work, it may also take a little bit of time to just get comfortable in front of a mic.
Yes.
You know, and always keep trying to improve. Like, you don't want to burn yourself out. Allow yourself breaks. Allow yourself to have fun first and foremost, because if you aren't having fun, then honestly, why are you doing it?
Exactly.
In that? And so what I like to do is I'll set weekends off, or for like 1 or 2 events maybe, such as this, for example. And then I would sit and look back and see, like, okay, I did this good. What can I do to improve that? Like, how can I improve my hotkeys so I don't lag when I do my voice mods? How can I swap my scenes better? How can I keep people interacted more? You know, I'll always set a goal for the week, and then I will try to reach that goal throughout that week. Another huge one, which is a little bonus, is like, be sure to network. Like, this one is undersold so much, because it's
100%.
You know, be sure to connect with other streamers, interact with viewers, you know, build that team, build that, you know, sort of safety network of people, because that sets you up for raids. It sets you up for bigger projects and side projects and fundraisers, and you'll always have someone to talk to learn and improve. And you kind of echo chamber yourself. You kind of hype yourself up to continue to go.
No, 100%. I completely agree with that. Networking is so important, and not only that, but I mean, you learn as you go along. It's becoming, you know, it's becoming really like you'll never start your first stream as perfect. You'll never. There's always going to be some. There's always you're never going to be. In fact, I don't think you'll ever will be a perfect streamer. To be honest with you, what is a perfect streamer? You know, but networking, learning from people is so important. I completely 100% agree with you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. So just moving away from streaming then for a moment, then let's go back about Resident Evil 4. You mentioned it a couple of times. We've got to talk about Resi 4. We're both Resi fans.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's your favorite Resident Evil game.
By far. Like, I played all of them, even the ones that ain't no good, but I played that one so many times.
So what's your favorite memories of Resident Evil 4?
Oh boy. Many. Like I said, the highlight of my life was that, like, professional pistol only run and getting all these people super involved in the map. But other than that, of all things, like, probably it's a more recent one, actually. I did a TMP only run.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it kind of turned my opinion of that gun completely on its head.
I love the TMP.
Because, oh yeah, like, I couldn't stand it when it started. Like, I was like, why do this when I can use a pistol with more damage? And then I realized I'll just save ammo until I upgrade it, and then once I have the power, it's fine.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've heard a few people, friends of mine and Twitch streamers as well. They crap on the TMP, but I love the TMP. The TMP is my go-to when it comes to El Gigante. every time TMP for me.
Oh yeah, I'm a stock pistol and sometimes I think the rifle if I get my hands on it. I don't remember my process right now. I'm a little confused because I've been playing a bunch of games lately, so my order is a little off. But yeah, I think I would almost always do pistol and rifle if I could do it. But since I'd done pistol only, I'm so used to the gun that it's the first thing I think of. So it's.
So what was your pistol go to? Was it Red 9 maybe, or was it a different one?
Honestly, my favorite of all time, my most consistent gone to is the Blacktail.
Okay.
I quite love the consistency of the Blacktail, especially for that run. I did a kneecapper run because it was more consistent to get them because the zombies like to duck and dodge if you aim at their face too long. So what I would do is I'd kneecap, kick, repeat, and the Blacktail most easily did that. But since I wasn't using stock pistols better for headshots, and I wasn't doing headshots, so.
Wow. So
yeah.
Have you seen any of So you just what other Resident Evil 4 challenges have you done? You seem like you've done quite a few.
Yeah, I've done pistol only. I haven't done knives only yet. I've done like knives and grenades before. I've done TMP. I need to do rifle only. Years back, I did a get off my lawn run, which was like the pump shotgun and grenades. Sometimes they're gimmicks more than challenges. I should totally try I should try knife only sometime, except for times where you have to, such as Ashley turning the cranks on the upper level, etc., etc.
Ugh, the water level.
And water level. I really want to try speedrun sometime. I have not tried speedrunning it like full-on routed speedrun. I've tried to go fast before, but I always kill everything. That's just me. Like, I take the nuclear stealth approach. If there's no one alive, no one can see me, right?
Yeah. Miss Anthrope.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the YouTuber called Dante Ravioli?
Yeah.
Because he's
watch
brilliant.
him.
He's brilliant.
I watch him before any of my Resident Evil 4 streams, actually, so I can get tips and
he's
understand.
Else. He's someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're coming up, probably getting close to the end now. A game I wanted to speak to you about was Spyro. As I can see the lovely little Spyro behind you. So what? Tell us some of your favorite Spyro memories.
Wow. Hours and hours and hours playing it with a foster brother of mine at the time. We had the whole trilogy, and as a kid, like, my motor skills weren't great, so when I mentioned I played Doom and Heretic, like, early on, I'd have to have help from my landlord. She'd control it, and I'd shoot the baddies and things, but Spyro was the first game I ever 100%ed. Yeah. And, honestly, first game I ever really, really fell in love with all the characters, too.
Yeah.
Like, it was the first game with, like, a story that I played. Yeah. Like, I watched someone play Baldur's Gate before, but I didn't really get it, as a kid. And yeah, I played so much of that game, especially Spyro 2.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, a lot of people tend to be either like Team Crash or Team Spyro. Obviously, you tend to find everyone love them both. But one thing that was so good about Spyro is that I always felt like the more mature of the two, really, in terms of its storytelling. And the charm of the characters, like you mentioned. So Spyro 2 is your favorite of the trilogy, was it?
Absolutely. I think 1, really got me hooked on the base idea, the base game, but Spyro 2 just kind of branched on that and found that happy medium without adding too many gimmicks. 3 was still very enjoyable, but, we started getting some of the gimmicks, some of the mini games. And I still enjoyed it greatly. Like, it's comparing ribeye to filet mignon, to me, at least. So.
Definitely. And did you like the remaster that came out? I thought it was a very good remaster, personally.
Absolutely. And the fact that it has localization to so many different languages, including like Swedish, which only like 2% of the world speaks, basically. It's incredible. And the fact that you can mod it too. Like people are showing up with Chonky Spyro,
Yes.
people are showing up as Nintendogs and Cinder, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I'm really hoping
The whole meme about Dragon Daddies.
Yeah, yes. I'm really hoping they do a new Spyro game. But I haven't heard much recently.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a lot. Don't know about
I
you.
haven't either. Basically only a couple leaks as far as I know. Nothing really super solidified.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But,
Fingers crossed.
Well, Miss Anthrope, thank you so much. It's been an absolute
Thank you.
pleasure. It's been such a fun chat talking to you. Oh, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have.
Absolutely.
Hey, excellent. Thank you. So people, please follow Miss Anthrope. She's a brilliant streamer. She's on Twitch. Are you on YouTube as well? I think you're on YouTube.
I have a channel, but it's not very active. I'm mostly active on Twitch and in Discord through my own and the Nightbreed Collective and otherwise.
Fantastic.
But you can pretty much come to English. I swear, you can contact me anytime, pretty much. So you know,
Oh, brilliant. Please.
either through either of those places.
There we go. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. So yeah, please give Miss Anthrope a follow. But that's avoid the wrap. So that's it. Episode 5 done. Thank you so much, guys. I'll catch you for the next one. Take care. Bye bye.